Heyo! Welcome back to Chapter Chumps, a reading podcast where three regular guys, and I cannot stress this enough, with no fucking credentials, read a book and then talk about it. As ever, I am your host.
I thought you were going to say, just to stress, regular.
Well, yeah. I mean, in a way, that is what I'm stressing. Just, a little bit more expansion.
Also, what do you mean? What do you mean? No,
I'm
fuck
feeling a little bit
credentials?
irregular.
You have a
today,
fucking English degree.
I do. Yes. Yeah. I'm an English major, and I'll be the first to tell you, all English majors are hacks.
You don't know shit.
Well, I knew that.
Yeah. So, I'm just the one, who's honest enough to say it. I went to school to read books. Come on, anyone can read a fucking book. You don't have to go tremendously in debt to do that.
I'm living proof.
That's right. Yeah.
You should have support your local library, kids.
I went into debt by not paying my toll bills driving across state lines like a normal average Joe.
That's right. This is how fucking regular we are. Connor literally has no credentials. He's the real American fucking dream. He'll read a book and no one can stop him. I am your host, Connor. I'm joined as ever by my two co-hosts, Connor, who apparently is also in debt. That's cool. And Josh.
Not as much as you are. That's not even close. Like a very modest amount of debt.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Josh, but your debt, you have like good debt. You have like reasonable debt that everyone. Oh yeah, like a mortgage. That's great.
It's manageable.
Yeah.
But it is technically a debt.
Yeah. No, my debt is bad, and it's getting worse.
I just have debts I could get arrested.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Well, you should probably pay those before you get arrested.
You know what, Connor? Even if you go to jail, it won't stop the podcast. We will fucking satellite call you every week and keep this show going.
Every prisoner has a podcast these days, like those January 6 guys. They all have podcasts in the clink.
Is that right? Wow, that's kind of a sick world we inhabit, isn't it? But nice to know that we'd be able to keep going even under those circumstances. I almost think that it would probably be a great boon to us in terms of like our notoriety if you were to go to jail. So I just think about it.
It would be a nice gimmick.
Yeah,
it would be a viral moment at the very least.
Yeah. Let's capitalize on that. Let's get you to prison, buddy. And then
I'll try and think of other ways, like new ways to do that.
Yeah, new and exciting ways to get yourself
arrested.
Yeah, sent to jail.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it's been a minute, as it usually is between books. A lot of times we finish a book and then we tell ourselves, hey, this is when we're going to start. And then we miss that date completely.
By like a week or two, yeah.
Yeah. That is pretty par for the course, and that's exactly what happened here. The last book we read was Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. And today I'm happy to say we're going to be discussing the first 4 chapters of H.G. Wells's The Time Machine.
A classic, literally a classic.
Yes, that's right.
Also, if you'd like to listen to our discussion about The Left Hand of Darkness, you can always check out our previous podcasts on our feed, which is where you're probably listening, because I'm literally the only one in our live stream right now, which is monitoring chat.
Absolutely, go check it out, guys. What are your copies of the books like? Or do you have the same copy, or I'm just trying to make sure I have it's I read the same thing as you guys.
I have the Kindle version of this book because it was free like 10 12 years ago when I got it.
Josh, Connor's trying to figure out if he even read The Time Machine. He's trying to figure out if he read the same fucking book we're all supposed to be reading.
I mean, there have been a lot of editions. Apparently.
There's a lot of different versions of it. So
because Connor obviously doesn't have the book and he's reading like a PDF or something that he had to get online, even though he had like a fucking month or more. I don't even know how long it's been now.
It's literally $1 for the ebook.
Yeah, no, I mean, the ebook, that's the same thing as a PDF though. Like, it's the same thing. Just words
Connor
on a screen.
needs technically that $1, Josh.
Technically not.
How much debt he's
technically
in,
no.
right?
It's a different file format, but you're not entirely wrong.
So
anyways, all right. So I just want to
the library. Every library is gonna have this.
I know. I haven't been to one of those yet.
Yeah. Connor also, humorously enough, cannot go back to a library because then it might be flagged that he's in tremendous library debt as well.
No, I mean only
he's
certain.
literally scared to go back into a library. To
Oh,
check
yes,
no.
The place that lends you books for free, you get in debt to that. I suppose you don't get the books back.
I mean, just
but...
that's really Connor's fault, kind of, because his idea for Dune Dudes happened, and I took the copy of Dune out of this library, and I never gave it back. And
yeah, right. That's my fault.
Yeah. Then my friend's wife borrowed it, and I haven't gotten it back, so I can't even get it if I wanted to. I could ask.
You don't have that copy of Dune. That's kind of sad. But
no, Jacob's wife Allison is borrowed it.
It's a good reason to get another copy.
You could always, if that becomes an issue, you can always just pay them back because it's like what, a $20 fee or something.
Yeah, I mean, I just I don't like to go back.
Yeah,
been there, done that. Like I said at the beginning, support your local libraries, kids.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Also, if you're a kid, stop listening. We are not a kid-friendly podcast.
I have since, though. I've been to other libraries, and I am generally, I do return books. Let's not. I don't want to sully my name. It's
Connor,
a one-time thing.
We're not trying to like tarnish your good image.
My stellar reputation.
Yeah, no, you do that all on your own, buddy. So
I want to make sure that so this book, it's like the main character, this guy's name is Adam, right?
Are you fucking serious, dude? Are you fucking stupid? It doesn't say his name. What the fuck are you reading?
He's reading the Hot Tub Time Machine's novelization, like you said in our text chat yesterday.
No, it probably does. I think
literally the first line is the time traveler, for so it will be convenient to speak of him.
Well, maybe they just gave him a name in my copy because maybe different editions have a name.
He probably has a name. I was expecting to learn his name as we read the book. I was going to talk about that on the podcast, but it kind of sounds like you probably blurted it out there, buddy.
Well, no, and then there was the guy that attempted suicide, right?
No. What are you? And so then, right now?
Well, I mean, are you sure? Because, well, just bear with me, because then they take him to that ski resort and cheer him up, and
it's a hot time machine. There you go. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna get a phone stand.
Travels in time, and they go back to the 80s, right? Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
No, I get it. It's funny to make me look as stupid as possible, isn't it? For like having this conversation with you at all. That's really the joke, isn't it? That I'm humoring this in any way. That I actually responded to you in any way is really.
I even called the bit like a minute before you got to it.
Josh got it right away. I was impressed.
I do read our text chats, even if I don't respond to your bullshit.
Oh, well, that's good.
Except the Instagram one. I've completely stopped following that.
Am I supposed to remember that one of the characters? I don't know any of the characters' names in Hot Tub Time Machine. Am I?
Josh knew the guy
that his name is Adam?
The guy was named Adam.
No, I had no idea. I've never seen the movie. I just remember what Connor texted us yesterday.
We got to watch it after we read this book.
No, we got to watch the original movie that they did for this.
It was inspired by this.
No, we got to watch like the 1950s or like early 40s. I don't even know how old it was. Maybe it was the 60s, but like the Technicolor version of this with like the Morlocks and the. I'm getting ahead of myself, but
we should watch.
I would like to see a movie. There's at least two.
Tom Cruise.
Is that the more modern one? I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was Tom Cruise.
Aren't you thinking of War of the Worlds?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, well, at least that's H.G. Wells.
You are such a little asshole tonight. You are like just like right back into it.
You are an argumentative person with red hair.
I'm not arguing about anything.
Line from the book. That's a reference to the time machine. I don't know if Connor read it, so I just had to say. Yeah.
I wouldn't know because I read a different book apparently.
Apparently,
I do quickly want to talk about our copies because I have mine right here.
Ooh, that's a cool cover.
Yeah,
I never saw that cover so I was looking up covers for the Blue Sky account. I went with one that looks like Einstein on a space scooter. But that's an interesting cover.
Yeah, mine, we had already talked about how I am tremendously in debt from being an English major, and that's all true. What's cool about this copy is I got this from my college bookstore. Well, because my first semester there, I took a sci-fi lit course, and wouldn't you know it, I did not read this fucking book. I was shitty at being an English major. I think most English majors are, but maybe I'm just projecting. But I was bad at it. I was like, I'm not going to read this fucking book. We had discussed this on the podcast before. Josh and I have both read The Time Machine because we went to the same high school, and we both took the sci-fi lit course at that high school. Shout out to Mr. Clenny, because it was a great course, and I really did read the book in high school. So
you read this thing, and then you were upset by me spoiling his apparent name that you thought was going to be a big reveal that he was named Adam.
Well, I mean, it's been 20 fucking years since we were in high school, so I mean, at that point, it kind of loops back around to be spoilers.
I was hoping to be surprised by this. His name's Adam. What the fuck?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know how hard it is to forget media?
Do you hear yourself, Connor? Is that what I sounded like? Is that what I sounded like, really? Because
I can't do the Irish accent.
Replay it, buddy.
I can't do the Irish accent.
You can go back and replay. Is that what I sounded like? No, I was just like, and you know what? I'll tell you why I thought / think that they're going to say this guy's name later. So this is paired with The Invisible Man. And during our break, I read The Invisible Man. I read a book. And there's some parallels. And interestingly, The Invisible Man is also referred to as The Invisible Man for like pretty much the whole book.
I think it was kind of a writing style of the time or Wells. I'm not sure which.
But he is eventually named. So it is something that Wells deliberately, but like in The Invisible Man, it's not even clear that he's withholding it from you. It's actually like kind of part of the story that you don't know his name. And I kind of thought I was never going to learn it, but then you do. And it's like, that's interesting. In The Time Machine, it's a lot weirder because there's just a blank when they say that never happens in The Invisible Man.
Okay. Yeah, no, this one feels very much like it's like a gentleman's dinner party that that's being recounted later on.
Yeah. Excuse me. It really reminded it reminded me of our hangout sessions.
If only.
Three gentlemen smoking cigars.
A little bit.
Yeah.
We also have, it's not just the time traveler who's left unnamed. There are several other characters who are attending these parties who are just given titles instead of an actual name. Yes. So, I will say before we really dive into this, we're kind of trying to speed through this book, aren't we? It is a shorter book. It's only 12 chapters, but since we're doing 4 chapters per podcast here, we're probably only going to have 3 podcasts on this particular book.
That's
plus whatever movie or movies we end up watching afterwards. But for the actual book discussion, we may be done with this month if we manage to keep our schedule for once.
Yeah, that's the plan. We would be talking about the end of this book at the end of June. So I hope we can stick to it.
Honestly, and given what we were discussing before the podcast, we might be able to watch one of the movies shortly after that.
That would be very cool. I would love to do that. Yeah.
We'll have to remember to bring microphones.
Yeah. That might just be how it all goes down. If only we had some kind of machine to transport us into the future to find out. But sometimes podcasting does feel a little bit like time traveling, because every now and then I'll go back and listen to an old one and I'll be like, that's what we're talking about? It's like you're locked in amber, in that moment of your past presence. So
it's a philanthropist cane.
Yeah. So yeah, hey, I did want to give some brief background as I kind of started here. I do have some specific memories of like kind of what goes down in the book here. Obviously I'm not going to be like talking about that beforehand, but as we like get to things, we'll kind of mention it. I'm sure Josh will do the same.
Yeah.
But like my enduring memory is even when I read this book back when I was 18, I think I would have been, right? Your last year of high school.
17, 18? Yeah.
17 or 18. I did like appreciate it and feel like, yeah, I'm reading a literary classic. And even then, it's like I fancied myself a science fiction fan because, I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan and several other properties and things I've been into. And so this really
15 minutes to the Star Wars mention, by the way.
Yep, I couldn't help it. Sorry. And so
just wait for the Doctor Who mention.
Even then,
16.
That's inevitable. There's no way we can't. Yeah. Even then, I was like, oh, this is like foundational. This is like this is like core sci-fi that like it is important to read, like as a fan of science fiction.
It is one of the earliest sci-fis there is. I mean, it's like this and Frankenstein are some of the earliest, and From the Earth to the Moon and Jules Verne, everything by Jules Verne. So yeah, this is one of the earliest sci-fis.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein in 1818. So she has a good...
Okay, so that's about... When was this?
She has a good, 80 years almost on...
yeah, this is like early...
Speaking of Mary Shelley, the woman on my shirt inspired her writing the story when they faced off against the Cybermen together.
Yep. Was that a Cyberman episode?
Oh my God.
I can't remember.
Oh my God. This is going to be just such a chore.
Yep.
No, I mean, that's fine. Yeah, no, you're right. That's how that went
fuck
down.
You.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, no, so this book came out in 1895, talking about the time machine now.
Thank you.
And so it's cool. Josh, do you have any general thoughts or memories you want to share of that way back when sci-fi high school lit course?
I don't know if I read this in that particular class, actually. I think I may have just picked it up on my own sometime in late middle school, early high school, kind of when I was reading Hitchhiker's Guide, that same era.
Gotcha.
But I don't know if I ever picked it up after that. Aside from, actually, no, I got the Kindle towards the end of my high school career, so I would have had to have picked it up by then. I don't know if I read it on the Kindle until now. But yeah, no, I do remember some of the beats, especially towards the end. But yeah, the details are lost aside from what's actually pop culture references and stuff like that. Meaning references back to the book, not the book has pop culture references. It is too early for what we consider pop culture. But it's what, like you said, foundational. So just rereading it Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. I was the whole time I was actually thinking oh, this is how the time machine moves, and all this their equivalent of technobabble of how you can't perceive the machine as it's moving. It's maybe that's how the TARDIS works, and why you can't see the TARDIS until it lands. Maybe that's why the TARDIS makes all the whooshing noises or something like that. So it was a lot of that when I was reading this time around.
Now that's a Doctor Who reference I'll give you points for. Nice one there,
Thank
Josh.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being a bit of an asshole now too. It's a baton that you got to pass back and forth.
Yeah, I was just making a silly joke about Hot Tub Time Machine. You got upset that you were tricked.
Oh my God!
I didn't even mean to trick you.
Wow.
But you're you got so upset after taking it seriously that now you're on your war path.
That's right. Yeah, no, Connor, I will decimate you by the end of this podcast.
I know. I am. I already know it's going to be one of those episodes. I kind of keep my head down and just be like, yeah, whatever. It's okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay.
No, come on,
yes,
buddy.
Okay.
We're all here to have fun. Connor, you have not previously read The Time Machine.
No, I haven't. How can I not know about its status as one of the great sci-fi stories of yesteryear. I mean, it informs so much of sci-fi to come, and obviously, just as a general fan of the idea of time travel, I've always been interested, but I don't know. There's nothing ever preventing me to read it, but I just never got around to it. And I mean, and I've been a fan of time travel for like that's one of the first skits that we filmed was a time travel skit where Connor, you were traveling to different times, different
with a skateboard
years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
and
what year is
in my yard. And you landed in the year 1240, and that was
it was just the time
that
of
was the
watch.
start of something beautiful.
It's true. And to this day, this is true, dear listener. To this day, whenever we notice it is 1240, we will text each other simply
day or night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is easily 80 to 90% of our group text chat is just 1240.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So time travel is kind of ingrained in our friendship a little bit.
I forgot that came from a time travel sketch.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I didn't. I remembered that today. But obviously Doctor Who is my favorite TV show of all time, probably, and it's about a time traveler, and so he, the character of the Doctor, whoever they are at the moment, has a time machine, called the TARDIS, and seems to operate a little bit differently than this time machine. But I think, like Josh was saying, there's some similarities there too. So obviously, I'll be pulling thoughts about that out of my pocket throughout this entire process.
And my first introduction to the time travel was the Treehouse of Horrors episode where Homer fixes his toaster. So that has absolutely no bearing on this book whatsoever, as far as I'm aware. He goes.
And then Josh, you and I watched Steins Gate, which is a great time travel anime.
Absolutely one of the best time travel series out there. Like I've said it multiple times on this podcast. I think Steins Gate helped me understand Doctor Who better.
Yeah, no, it's a really great, just a great show, a great breakdown of time travel and exploring those ideas.
Yeah.
It's a super interesting concept. So I'm excited that this is kind of. I mean, I obviously, like, the idea of time traveling through time has probably been with it, like, in our culture for probably as long as we could speak and have conversations and stuff, but. Like, this is really the origin point of it being like a big pillar of like fiction storytelling, I think.
Yeah.
As far as we're aware.
I can hear Josh going, actually, like he's gonna try to see, like,
Oh, no, sorry. When did you say this book came out?
1895.
Oh, 6 years prior, we have a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which is technically a time travel story. By Mark Twain,
right?
But that's more of a fantasy than a sci-fi.
Yeah, rest in piss, Mark Twain.
But still a time travel story that predates this one.
Well, but I think Connor's point is, like, H.G. Wells didn't invent the concept of time travel.
No, but he certainly helped popularize it.
Right. So it's like, I think it's fair to say that, like, H.G. Wells, this is kind of like the beginning of our modern notion of time travel in, like,
exactly. This cements it, like I was saying, this cements it as a pillar of science fiction or a fiction storytelling in general.
Wells and Verne very much solidified what science fiction was until roughly Star Wars came out. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know what's kind of funny too? Talking about Verne,
like Star Trek, maybe. I don't know.
Because, so, like I said, we're reading The Time Machine. I've read it before. I read The Invisible Man for the first time during our break, just because I was like, that was my goal. I want to try to. And then I was like, what else has H.G. Wells done? And I literally thought, I was like, War of the Worlds. And then I was like, wait a minute. There's no way this motherfucker did Time Machine, Invisible Man, and War of the Worlds. There's no fucking way. So I was like, oh, maybe that's Verne. Maybe that's Jules Verne who did that. And obviously,
to the moon.
There's no surprise here because he fucking did do it. He fucking wrote War of the Worlds, which is really, I would like to read that book as well sometime.
Yeah.
And I have seen that Tom Cruise movie, and it actually fucking rocks. For your information.
H.G. Wells is also one of the villains in Warehouse 13.
I don't know anything about that. So yeah, why don't we steer our conversation down that fourth dimension of time as our consciousness travels down it, and that
I'm looking at
fast path forward. Josh, is there something else you want to add?
I was quickly trying to look up his what's the literary equivalent of filmography?
Bibliography,
I guess. Just to see what other books he did. And the one of the books that came up was Things to Come. And I think that's the story that literally inspired the scientists who created the atomic bomb. Not Oppenheimer, but like the people who... the person who conceived of the theory that would lead to the atomic bomb, because
Enrico
Wells
Fermi
had written about something. No, or some other guy, I can't remember the name of at the moment. But he was literally like standing at a bus stop thinking about the story and was like, oh no, I just created he came up with how to make an atomic bomb before I think even uranium was determined to be a fuel for it. But oh no, it was The World Set Free. That's what it was. Yeah, The World Set Free is the one that inspired the atomic bomb.
But that's something that H.G. Wells also wrote?
Yes, in 1914.
I see. So clearly a very influential and prolific writer.
With much foresight.
Sometimes called the father of science fiction, which, I think is fine. We already kind of talked about Shelley, who's like really credited as like being the first science fiction writer. So it feels like maybe a little bit of a jab to be like, oh, the father, over the mother, like.
Yeah, and according to my research, they never even fucked, so they couldn't have conceived. Like, they couldn't have even.
unless he actually built this time machine of his.
Oh fuck, Connor, you're so right.
Because when you actually get down to brass tacks, and because H.G. Wells wrote this fucking book, obviously, and when you see what he has the characters say, when he has the time traveler character explain how time travel is possible, doesn't it make you kind of suspect maybe this guy actually cracked the code?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he knows what he's doing.
I think he does.
No writer could just have the imagination to think of something like this. Like,
it's too technical.
It's too sound. It's too technical. Exactly. Yeah. No, but in all jokes aside, yeah, I think Mary Shelley should be given the credit she is due. And like, yeah, I mean, there's definitely sexism at play there.
It's more so like, I don't think that anyone's trying to take away Mary Shelley's credit but it's like I feel like most genres, like, they don't have like a mom and a dad. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. They just have the originator.
Right. You'll be like, this is the creator, and a lot of times it's a guy, so they'll be like the father, the grandfather, right? But I think like Mary Shelley kind of has this very unique distinction of being like the mother / just like kind of agreed upon creator of science fiction as a genre. And so I thought it was kind of funny in a way to stumble upon and see that H.G. Wells is referred to. And I think, like, understandably so, given all the work that we're discussing here. It's like, yeah, this guy left an indelible mark. Like,
he's more like
calling him the father, but
he's more like the first son, right?
Yeah, like maybe, right.
He's like Mary Shelley's son, little baby boy.
Yeah. Maybe he's like some 4 foot tall little baby man, just
like wearing a robe or something.
Right, just like waddling around in a in a perfect future with no strife.
Totally.
That's H.G. Wells. That's what he would want to hear. So at any rate, I think we've done enough joking around / preamble. Because a lot of that conversation was worthwhile. We talked about the fucking book, the fucking history. This book came out in 1895. Imagine that. Like, imagine being like a fucking chimney sweep in 1895 and you fucking learned how to read in secret or whatever because no one would teach you, and you against all odds you fucking figured it out, and someone somehow, whatever it is, you get this fucking book. 1895, you read this shit. That's gotta crack your skull open, right? I mean,
probably send some people to psych wards.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's probably too much for them.
Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe I'm underestimating the people of 1895. But I guess what I will say as a reader in 2025. So let me do some math here quickly.
A couple of years
130
after.
years later.
Yep.
This book, we're only 4 chapters in, but let me tell you, this book, it has staying power. It has an impact. Let's talk about these chapters here and see if we all agree on, does this book have any effect on us? What do we think about these opening 4 chapters? The first chapter is very interesting. I love that it opens with the line that Josh already referred to. Just immediately, the first word, the first line in the book here is the time traveler. I promise I am not going to keep going back and forth between this and the Invisible Man, but we were talking about, like, is this a writing style of, and interestingly, the Invisible Man opens with the stranger, which the Invisible Man is also referred to as. So, like, both of these noteworthy books in Wells's body of work begin with like a title that refers to this major character within the text, and it's done in a way in which, like, their name is concealed, like they're referred to by this signifier rather than like any personal kind of identifier. It'd be like if I opened up this podcast and I just said I'm the host and never fucking said my name, like maybe I should start doing that. I don't know. But I do think it's effective. Like, it's a really provocative way to open up a book like this, which, obviously you go into it knowing it's called The Time Machine. And so to open it with the time traveler, but then to like immediately place his time traveling under scrutiny, I thought was like a really interesting dynamic, because at once the text is like proclaiming this person to be a time traveler, and yet all the characters around him, are skeptics. They're like, are you really that? Can you really do that? And so even though they're introduced in this matter-of-fact way, they start off by like having to kind of like justify and prove to the characters, and I think kind of by extension the reader of 1895, to be like, yes, this thing is possible and I'm going to explain how. But yeah, at any rate, this first chapter, as Josh was or maybe Connor, but I think Josh was saying, it's basically like a dinner party. Yep. And so the time traveler invites this group of people, to his home, it seems, / laboratory. And he explains that he's figured out how to time travel. He shows a model that is able to demonstrate time traveling. And he explains in like, I don't know, not mathematical quite, but I mean, he in like scientific language, how a time travel is feasible. And then the chapter kind of ends where the time traveler is like, yeah, this is actually my goal. It's no joke. I am going to travel through time. Connor, as a first-time reader here, any thoughts you want to share on the opening chapter?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think, yeah, it was an interesting setup. I mean, it was very funny too, because it's like right away you're like, you are time traveling yourself by going to a dinner party in the late 1800s, the
Yeah.
19th century, you know, and you get the, you know, your sophisticated gentlemen scholars and having their fruitful discussions over cigars, and so
Yes.
you can tell the kind of I just that this too is of its time, and it just made me think about that, like, do you think if we were alive during that time period we would be in some of those rooms, like having cigars and brandy or whatever and talking about big ideas with our fellow
Yeah.
gentlemen?
Yeah, you know what's funny, Connor, is I actually, this thought did strike me as I was reading, and I was like, man, I would fucking thrive in the late 1800s, because that's pretty much what we do on this podcast.
Yeah, Connor, I know.
I think podcasting in a lot of ways is kind of like the 2025 version of having like a highbrow dinner party with your friends.
That sucks so bad.
Yeah. And that's exactly what the time traveler would think. Like, look at their reaction when they travel to the future. They're like, these fucking castrated, you know, spineless fucking babies can't
They're
fucking
not
do
even
it.
in the same room and we're
Yeah.
smoking cigars anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, no, they would. H.G. Wells would take one look at this podcast and absolutely fucking hate each of our guts.
They're going
just
to bat for
by
Mary
virtue of
Shelley? What the fuck? What happened to these guys?
I'm the fucking father of science fiction.
But yeah,
Yeah.
no, so that's just like it's just a funny setting, and these characters they're interesting, and it's you know, fun seeing the different kind of personalities, and some of so some are more skeptic than others, and yeah, I like the main guy, the time traveler. He just reminds me of a guy from that era. I picture I've never seen these movies, but going back to Doctor Who, there's two Doctor Who movies made in the 60s when Dalek Mania was happening, and Peter Cushing played the Doctor in those movies.
Yeah.
So I picture him as the main character here in like his like jacket,
That's
with his mustache. So
that's interesting, because I was imagining someone younger.
Yeah,
maybe. I was
maybe.
imagining someone in their 40s, maybe.
Yeah. That is really really cool though. It's kind of funny because when we were reading 2000, this made me think a little bit of 2001, only in the sense that, like, you're talking about how this book is so of its time, right? And like we open with this dinner party, and that's like such a signifier of like the age in which this book was written. And like immediately, you know, your mind is like pulling examples of you know, from other media, you know, that you may have crossed paths with or whatever it is, to like try to like locate this moment in time, you know, all these like disparate little parts and things. And just like with 2001, we were like, you know, we could really only picture the characters as like 60s guys, especially with the way it was written. And I really caught myself reading this and being like, wow, these are like real fucking 1800s guys. Like these are 17th century motherfuckers to the core.
They got like pocket watches.
19th century.
Yes. Oh, I meant to say 19th century. Thank you.
Pocket watches and I don't fucking know. Lapels.
Cigars.
Well, I mean, like tuxedos,
champagne,
dinner, and like
servants.
Yeah.
That so we don't even really.
Actually, there's one part where.
Yeah.
A little. I mean, there's with the servant. Yeah.
There's actually one part with the second dinner party where someone pulls out a cigarette, and that felt anachronous to me because everyone else had cigars.
Like, yeah, that's like somebody vaping in the 90s.
Oh my god! Wow. Yeah. No, you think they're all like rolling their eyes too? It's like, you know.
Yeah, look at this young kid. He thinks he's so cool with the cigarette. That's never gonna catch on.
Yeah, no. So anyways, yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. Josh, what about you? This first chapter here, what was it like jumping back into the time machine after all this time?
A little familiar and a little unfamiliar. Like I there was definitely some things like naming the other characters I just did not remember. But I do vaguely remember the whole premise being like, oh yeah, they're sitting around, you know, the fire after dinner, and the time traveler is like, hey, check this shit out. But you know, 19th century style. And I do remember there being the little fake machine. I'm sorry, not fake, but
the model.
The model, yes. And I forgot it's just he just sets it on its way, and you never see it again because there's no way to stop it. There's nobody on the machine to stop it. And you got to remember, these are all like clockwork machines the whole time, so it's that really like not quite steampunk, but very steampunk-esque, like Victorian era.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for here? Styling, I guess, of all of it.
Yeah.
And so that it's just kind of familiar jumping back into that. But a lot of the explanations, I mean, I have watched so many videos on time travel, Doctor Who theory, also just like quantum mechanics and modern physics since I last read this book. I have such a deeper understanding from my actual college education about how stuff works. And it's still interesting how easily the explanation that Wells came up with over 120 years ago just naturally fits into everything, even today. So it's that's fun.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about that? Because that's definitely one of the things I wanted to discuss in this first chapter. First and foremost, before we even actually get into the...
Before you get into this, can I call for a tight 2 break?
Yeah, that's fine. And then we'll come back and we will discuss the inner workings of time travel.
All right. Time for a tight toot.
Thank you. Are we still live? Yeah, we are. Okay.
We're live still, but not recording.
Okay. Sorry. I got a message in the middle of that first part from family that apparently Israel attacked Iran.
Oh yeah, I read that too. I read that while I was in the bathroom just now. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty.
So that's why I got quiet. It's like, oh fuck, I gotta figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So hey, Connor.
Crazy times.
Hey, yeah. We live in troubled times, right?
We live in troubled times. All right.
I'm ready.
Goddamn. All right, ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So we were going to talk about the characters talking about time travel. First thing I want to say, and this is one of my enduring memories from when I first read this back in high school. I always thought it was interesting and almost kind of like quaint that H.G. Wells felt that he had to have his characters explain time travel. This was like my big takeaway when I was 18 because we talked about these.
Sorry, that the author had to explain the mechanic of the entire story.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, because we talk about like time travel stories now, and it's so ingrained. Like there's a cultural understanding of what time travel is. So like when you watch Doctor Who, all they really have to say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like all they really have to say is like the TARDIS can time travel, and that's it. You just have a complete understanding of like the function of that thing. And I know there's a lot of expansion on TARDIS lore specifically. We don't have to.
Well, there's also like different flavors of time travel. I mean, that's the whole plot in.
Right. Okay. But again, this is everything.
All right, let me tell you about how the TARDIS works step by step.
This is all
right. Back in the ancient days of Gallifrey, Omega discovered how to harness the energy of a black hole, and he turned it into the Eye of Harmony, and then that's what powers the time machine.
All right, when did this come? Is this 60s lore?
No, this is 70s. This is 70s.
Okay, whatever.
But no, you're absolutely right. When Doctor Who comes on screen, all you need to know is this is a time travel. It's a machine that moves through time and space. That's all the information you need.
Right. So
and you're given for a long time.
It moves in 4 directions.
Yes. My only point here is that this story was written at a time where H.G. Wells feels as though he has to include characters who are skeptics to the concept of time travel and then have a character explain in obviously not like completely clear detail because it's impossible, but to like give some sort of justification based or like couched within scientific understanding. And then it's like, okay, now we can continue. Now the plot begins.
Literally couched, by the way.
Yes, yeah. And I don't bring that up as a criticism. It's not like, oh, how fucking droll, It's like I think it's a fascinating insight within the into the time in which this book was written. I believe that H.G. Wells is completely justified in how he wrote this to an audience reading this in 1895. And I think that is like particularly fascinating further and further on as time progresses, that like you come back to it and you read it. It's like there was a time in which this was not like the pillar of sci-fi understanding that we have already talked at length about, like how we understand it today. This was literally like a novel concept. This had to be explained. And
cool. reading this as a middle high schooler, I mean, this kind of shit was mind-blowing. It's actually my second note here. Clearly the time traveler proceeded, any real body must have extension in 4 directions. Directions. It must have length, breadth, thickness, and duration. But through a natural infirmity of the flesh, which I will explain to you in a moment, we incline to overlook this fact. And it's that whole section of this chapter of explaining that, yes, a point is I'm sorry, a line is one-dimensional, a square is two-dimensional, and a cube is three-dimensional. But no, a cube is actually fourth-dimensional because an instantaneous cube can't exist.
Yes.
And it's at that when you having that realization, when you're 14 is mind blowing. It's like when you're 5 and you realize the sun's going to die in 2 billion years,
Yeah.
5 billion years, whatever the number was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I mean, even reading it today for what it's worth, I was like, it does feel like it bears repeating. And even the characters are kind of privy to that. It's like, it's easy to overlook because like we all durate and exist through time. So like it feels like, it's the air you breathe, you exist within it. And so it is easy to overlook in that regard.
I also like the phrasing of our consciousness is intermittently marching in one single direction, because he's referring to sleep. Like we sleep every day, hopefully, and you're not conscious when you're sleeping, so your consciousness is intermittent. I like that. I love that late 19th century use of the language. Just use of the language. It's great.
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of like poetic, or I mean, like it feels poetic because, like, again, as like the time has progressed, I mean, the way we talk just like is fucking stupider. I'll have to. I mean, that's a perfect example, by the way. What I just said, fucking stupider. What a stupid way to say that, But like, there's
asinine even.
Yeah, I'll be reading through this and I'll be like, wait a minute, I gotta reread that. And it's like, yeah, like I get it, I understand it, I can parse the language, but hey, times have changed, and it really is intriguing to consider, like, this was just like more standardized when it was written the way it is.
I feel like there's more innuendo in the older way the language is used in Wells's time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times when a character like says something outright, they even have to preface it. They'll be like, "I'm just gonna say it,"
Yeah.
Like,
I weigh Shifkathor.
Exactly. That's exactly what it feels like, man. Wow.
And we already tied it back into our previous book. Awesome.
Yeah, great call. At any rate, so I did want to talk about, so like, I don't want to get too hung up on it, but the thing that I really liked about this explanation of the feasibility of time travel is, like Josh has already alluded to, discussing time as the fourth dimension. And so like things have to exist, they have to have duration, they have to exist through time. And so that kind of like comes back to this like conversation that the characters have where the time travelers like, well, pretty much people really could only operate in two dimensions. It's like we couldn't really go up or down unless it was like you fell and it was really shitty, and that's kind of like that limit of traveling, quote unquote, in the duration of like heights or up verticality.
Yep.
As described by like jumping and stuff, like that limited but still appreciable movement is likened to the ways in which people time travel mentally by recalling past events. And it's like, so the time traveler is making this argument saying that you already travel through the fourth dimension every time you recall a memory with like a vivid understanding of the details. Like you have the capacity to do that. Do you want to add on to that, Josh?
I was going to say, I think this is probably the part of the explanation that falls apart for me the most. Because to me, a recollection isn't actual travel. It'd be more akin to, I guess, a portrait. The portrait example that they're using, it's a record of a snapshot in the fourth dimension. It's not an actual transportation to that time. You are, I mean, it's metaphorical in that sense, but you are recalling a snapshot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole more modern take on things where every time you remember something, you're technically rewriting it in your memory.
Right.
So it's not actually what happened.
Well,
but it's still, metaphorically speaking, a great analogy.
Yeah, I agree with all those technicalities. It's just, I think he's making this argument of like, like, yes, your physical body stays where it is, but like consciously, just like intermittent consciousness through sleeping. I think he's making this argument that it's like, it's your consciousness that is time traveling.
Yes.
And that is like some sort of like spiritual extension of yourself.
How about this, guys? Time travel has always been possible in dreams.
Is that another Doctor Who thing, or are we just?
Yeah, that's a Stephen Moffat idea.
Yeah. You sly dog.
Fair. And the other part about this that helps me get through it is the time traveler is explaining time travel to people who don't, to the audience, effectively. People who do not understand time travel like we do as subjects of modern pop culture. But so basically his explanation here is lies we tell the children. They're not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to be exact in their explanation. They have to get the idea of what he's trying to convey across so that they can start to understand, and then the actual details can come later, which I don't know if they actually do for the sake of the story that we're about to dive into here. But it helps people understand, like, okay, this is what it means to move through time. Kind of.
Yes. Yeah, I see what you mean. And I wasn't quite done. I wanted to add one more thing, which is kind of going off of what you're saying, where it's like this is sort of just the jumping off point, because the time traveler the time traveler is likening the like kind of negligible, but in his argument, very real time travel, quote unquote, that we experience in recollecting things, to the basically negligible but real, measurable distance that you travel vertically when you jump. Because then the characters are like, oh, well, what about a balloon? Like, what about machines that we make in order to increase? And so, like, the time traveler is saying, like, exactly so. Because even though
exactly what
yes, even though we have the capacity to travel in those 4 dimensions, it's limited, and we have to use machinery in order to like actually expand our ability to do so in like a appreciable way. And so he's saying, if you can, quote unquote, negligibly travel through time through your memory, just like jumping, does the argument not follow that the invention of the balloon to travel quickly, there is still some invention waiting to be made to expand and capitalize on our travel through the 4th dimension? That's all.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good argument.
Yeah, and that is kind of what I was trying to get at a moment ago. You did a much better job at explaining it, but like, yeah, he's starting off with the basics, which are kind of wrong, but it's to get them to understand what he's about to show them, which is this is a machine that lets you travel through time. It's a time machine. And they're like, oh, so then they go, oh, you built a clock, you silly fool, or whatever the hell 19th century gentleman would refer to another gentleman as when he wants to call them a fool.
There was a really funny word that they use, like foppish or something like that. Like, I just like that one.
I don't remember.
It was something like with an F.
I believe it, but I don't remember.
Fokker.
Yeah, Meet the Fockers.
Yeah, Meet the Fockers, exactly. Yep.
That's where it originated from.
That's the movie we're gonna watch after the Time Machine. Meet the Fockers.
I can imagine Ben Stiller in the Time Machine. Movie.
Yeah. He wouldn't be the time traveler. I think he would be like the.
He'd be what's his face, the guy who's like doubting him.
Yeah, he could
Philby.
He could either be doubting.
Philby. He'd be Philby.
He'd be Philby. Yeah, he would play a good Philby, I think, especially if he had a mean pair of mutton chops on him, a big
Oh
mustache.
yeah, oh my god. And just imagine the voice he's doing, he'd be like time travel, huh?
Yeah. That's a good Ben Stiller pretending to be doubtful about time travel impression. Yeah. It's nice. He also could play the apparent narrator of our story, because we have said that the time traveler is like the main character. Interestingly, this whole story is kind of built within this framing device, which is not uncommon of the time, but this framing device where someone is writing down the story of the time traveler telling the story.
Does that make this a second person perspective narrative? Is this what second person is? Or is this technically third person?
No, it still isn't. I actually can tell you this as an English major, believe it or not, because second person is if you were describing the events as happening to you opened the door.
So if the narrator was telling the time traveler what he experienced, that would be second person.
I guess I can only think of second person as someone writing about, I don't know, like
you the reader.
You the reader.
Yeah.
But of course, you're not really doing it. I think it's meant to like plant you like bizarrely into the shoes of the character.
I mean, it could be a fourth wall break, where like with Hitchhiker's Guide, when it'd be like, oh, when you read this, you would assume so and so. Like when the narrator goes off in Hitchhiker's or something like that.
That actually might be an example of it. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure. Again, I was a bad English major, but I'm pretty sure that second person you'd actually be referring. You would be using the pronoun "you" to refer to.
Okay.
Thank you. But still, like this is kind of like a funny way of telling the story, right? It's like this is not the time traveler, and like we get in a further chapter. I think it's like the end of chapter 2, beginning of chapter 3. Whenever the time traveler is about to begin telling his story of like actually time traveling, whoever is writing this story down, we don't have their name yet either. They only refer to themselves as I. They write like pretty much they're like, man, I hope I can do this dude's story justice, because you should have been there when he told this story to us, and all I can do is write it down after the fact. So
this is also like when radio and records were a new thing. So the idea of recording stuff is not really there.
Yeah.
So this is the best that they can do. And I mean, it does make you wonder what a actual recording or even a video recording of this recollection of the time traveler's journey could have been like. Yeah.
It did make me think like, man, I hope the audiobook for the Time Machine is really good, because the writer is kind of trying to get you to imagine. They're like, man, if only you could like, hear the passion in their voice growing as they told her. It's like, I hope that there's audiobooks that do this justice and really try to create that feeling. I'm sure they do.
But especially something that is public.
Yeah. Public domain?
Public domain, thank you, yes.
Yeah, right. I think it's old enough for that, right? Okay. Fuck. We probably got to get a move on here, don't we? Because we're
an hour in.
I just want to say I was waiting the entire time, like when the clock or the mini time machine, clock-sized mini time machine disappeared. I was waiting for it to come back, like at the end of the chapter, and then everyone goes, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
it traveled 20 minutes into the future.
No, but I mean that's the thing. When he first sets it off, he mentions that it goes inexorably onward into the future forever, because there's nobody to turn it off.
Yeah.
It is permanently traveling forward through, which is like a mind fucking thought. Like,
it is surely would run out of energy at some point, but this is before they really think about that, I guess.
You know, I did have just a couple things. Since we're talking about the model, there was this part that again was interesting, but this I kind of felt like this is where I sort of rubbed up against the really, I'm not sure this allegory or this comparison really holds up. Because when the model time machine disappears, all the characters are like, what, really? The time traveler says to who is that character? Like the psychologist says to the psychologist, I think it is, you can explain this one. You can explain how it isn't there anymore. Even you can do it. What is it? And then they have like an aha moment. They're like, oh yeah, it's just like a traveling bullet or a spoke on a spinning wheel. Like, and it's very clever in the sense that, like, yes, even though the time machine is stationary, quote unquote, and we see this much more vividly when the time traveler time travels, of course. But even though it's like somehow like physically it stays in the same location, it is traveling and moving through time, through the fourth dimension. And so you cannot see it. That is fascinating. Here's the thing I think is weird. And then you tell me what you think. Because the psychologist puts his hand through the empty space and he's like, of course, there's nothing there. And I'm like, well, okay, hang on. Because if we're likening this to a traveling bullet or a spoke on a spinning wheel, if you put your fucking hand there, you're going to feel it, buddy, even if you can't see it. And so I guess I was like, is it me? Or I don't know, like that did not fully click to me. Even if it's moving, if it stays in the same space throughout time, should you not actually be able to interact with it, given the way it is described in the story?
I do think I think you're into the weeds, absolutely, but I see where you're going with this. I absolutely agree with you. I think what Wells is going for here is, though, when you're time traveling, it's you're not present. He kind of says it like you're stretched thin. And I guess at 1/20th actual like current rate of time, you can just, it's kind of like air, you pass through it. They mentioned during the time travel sequence that if they had ended their time travel like in the side of a building or in some rock, then he could have just exploded. So apparently they are not affected during the time travel, but if he stopped and became whole in the middle of another object, then things would have gotten very violent very quickly at an atomic level. And this whole passage is also like why I was thinking of the TARDIS, is because, this is why the TARDIS disappears. It makes like the whooshing noise and like fades in and out. It's because it's becoming strewn out across time. And it's not present.
Yeah, I see.
Oh, that's the other thing. If you could look at it this way, it's like it's the model went off in time. It is no longer fully present. So no, you cannot hit it.
You can't interact with it in the present, even though like intangibly, like it's technically there, right? But it's like that fourth dimensional bizarre nape, right? It's like you can't interact with it in your timeline.
Right. It's also the whole point of you can't have a cube that's instantaneous.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I'm with it. Connor,
you're absolutely right. If there was an object there traveling through time, it probably would create some sort of force that you could feel. Yes.
Well, I'm just thinking like it, because at a certain point, like I feel like the speed that an object is going, like it's like, at what point does it just become like, I don't know,
energy?
Yeah, I guess.
It's always energy, but
and then like at what point? Because when we get into him using the time machine, it starts off, it like speeds up as it goes. It gets faster and faster until
it's like a slow acceleration.
Yeah. So like, at what point does that, like, do you stop being like a physical presence, or is that automatic? And does it, when you decide to stop, is that in that second do you become a physical object, or is it a process?
I think it fades because when he does set the model off, they can still see it for quite a while. Like they're talking about it as it's fading away.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think it does. There is a cutoff, but it's gradual.
And that does line up with the description of when the time traveler is in the machine time traveling, because even though it's like very immediate, he pulls the lever and it's like, oh, it went from 10 to 3:30, right?
Yeah.
But like he describes it going faster and faster until like, you know, the sky becomes like a uniform color, right, because the shift of day to night is
and the sun and moon become bands in the sky, yes, instead of, you know, points, and he can like eventually just see the sun like going season by season.
Yes.
And the ground starts to like flash white and green. It very much so, yeah.
Well, just one more thing. Like, it reminds me of like an airplane landing on a runway. You know, it's like
or just driving down a highway.
Or driving. I mean, you just have to know, because you have to make sure your path is clear, but he can't. You know, so like there has to be. There's a period of deceleration that you have to go under, and like you have to make sure there's nothing in your way, like, because if like anything was in his way, however many years he's decelerating, you know, like slowly becoming physical or corporeal or whatever. It's like it's the same thing as if there's like something was in your way on the highway or landing an airplane on the runway or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Actually,
I like that Connor's making the runway analogy, and
I bet the actual pilot.
No, yes, and you know what? I bet it's because he fucking watched the second season of The Rehearsal.
It's absolutely The Rehearsal.
Connor, you know, I finished watching that season 2 finally. I watched.
Oh, you did? Awesome.
Yeah, I watched it. Blew my mind.
Fucking insane. It was fucking insane. It was
the last 2 minutes where Nathan Fielder is like, oh yeah, and in my spare time when I'm not filming, I just fly vacant 747s.
Yes, I know. I do. Yes.
I was like, I believe it. I believe it.
It's all absolutely true. It's people have looked into it. It's proven. This is what he did. Josh, actually, Cora said, wouldn't your friend Josh like this? Because you're into airplane, like you fly airplanes and stuff. And I was like, I think he would be very interested in it. I think I'd be very interested to get your reaction, because
only like 6 episodes. Josh, you gotta watch don't even watch season 1. They're not
don't watch season 1
in any appreciable way. Watch season 2 of The Rehearsal. It's fucking fascinating in terms of aviation.
Yeah,
I don't even know the context of this show. So.
It's okay. You don't have to. It's better if you don't know.
It's better to go into it without the context.
Yeah. Please, anyways, I don't want to get off track. I'm just like, Connor, I see you. I know that's why you're doing that.
You're absolutely right.
I watched it. It was awesome.
It was awesome.
Okay. Connor said he had one more thing, and I'm really sorry. I have one more thing. I don't want to be like, I know we've been at the first chapter. I have less notes on the following chapters. It does kind of flow into like this, you know, there's just a lot on the outset here.
In my copy of the book, the chapters aren't even separated by pages. It's just like you hit the paragraph and then there's a little Roman numeral for the next chapter.
Yes, same with mine. So I imagine that's probably similar for how it is. Last thing I wanted to mention in this chapter that I thought was funny. So the time traveler keeps trying to convince this group of people that it's like, I can time travel. Like I've figured it out. Here's my model. I guess one quick aside, I keep saying one more thing and I just cannot fucking help myself. I'm so sorry. I kind of wanted the characters to be more skeptical, because, you know, when the model disappears, the group is largely, they're kind of convinced. Like they talk about in the beginning of the second chapter, like they have a whole week to sort of ruminate on it and reflect, and they're like, did it really happen? But even in the moment, you know, because even if you can create a machine that can disappear from view, it doesn't mean it's traveling through time. I was waiting for one of the characters there to be like, okay, so you created something that is able to, you know, become incorporeal. You know, we can't touch it, we can't see it, but it doesn't mean that it's time traveling. I wanted to see some sort of like further, well, I don't know. I don't need more proof from the time traveler. Obviously, the time traveler can do what he claims to do. I wanted the characters to like interrogate it further.
Yeah. When were we talking about doubt recently? Was that for Chapter Chumps or was that for something else?
That was for Who Dudes.
That was for Who Dudes. Okay, yeah. I was talking about
episode.
Yeah.
I was talking about doubt as like a core part of the scientific method, and like you have to doubt everything that you're seeing so that you have a reason to prove it wrong or not. It's like doubting everything is what kind of leads to the realization that things are not as they seem. Yeah. Helps you realize what's actually going on.
Yes. Well, at any rate, the thing I really wanted to talk, this is just an aside. I was just saying, like, I would have liked for the characters to be more skeptical, because just because something disappears does not mean it's time traveling. But the thing I really wanted to mention is that at the end of the first chapter, the characters are like, how do we know this isn't like that one fucking time you made us believe we saw a ghost?
I made this. Yeah, I have the same note. I noted the same or highlighted the same thing. Look here, said the medical man. Are you perfectly serious, or is this a trick like that ghost you showed us last Christmas?
Yeah. And so it turns out at the end of the chapter that all these characters have like every right to be complete. And the time traveler doesn't even deny it. He's like, yeah, it was fake. I mean, he doesn't outright say that, but the implication is like he didn't fucking make a ghost.
He's a little troll.
Right. And so, like, it kind of turns out that the time traveler himself, and we do see this in other places, in this chapter and elsewhere, the time traveler himself is a bit of a smarmy twat. And that's a technical term.
Yes.
That's a technical English term, by the way. I picked that up when I was across the pond.
They say that that's actually a positive thing over there.
Well, yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world, you know, but it's kind of funny because the chapter closes with this idea that the time traveler, it's almost like a bit of the boy who cried wolf situation. And he's saying, no, I really did it. I really figured out time travel. And all the other characters are there and they're like, did you really? Or is this like the time you somehow expertly pranked us into believing that you conjured a fucking spirit? And the time traveler just doesn't even acknowledge it, really. He's just like, I plan to travel through time. Is that clear enough for you, motherfucker? And I'm kind of hung up on the ghost thing all of a sudden, where it's like,
this is like Hitchhikers all over again with the ghost.
This is like Hitchhikers all over again. Yes.
My exact note on that was, is this just a reference to A Christmas Carol?
That's Josh. That was actually that's the first thing that I thought of is that like he read
Ghost
a Christmas Carol. Yeah, he read A Christmas Carol and like had an idea to prank them, like to that inspired that or something.
Yeah,
I feel like it might be a subtle reference. When did that come out?
Great point. I don't know. I do feel like A Christmas Carol is before this. I think it predates it.
I think
so too.
Yeah, for sure. But at any rate, it's just funny because, like, it feels like the author
1843.
1843. It feels like
all right,
the author, the
story.
There's so much is done to try to like justify the time traveler, and then at the very end of the chapter, the characters are like, but what about that one time? And then the time traveler's just like, don't worry about that. They have every fucking right to believe that he's pulling a fast one on them. They have every fucking right to be skeptical. And it's like, why even include that? It's so weird to have
the next chapter.
Line.
And the next chapter, it's a completely different set of people who actually listen to the story. It's just the narrator and like the medical man, I think, or the philosopher.
Yeah.
I think there's two of them that were there the last time.
Yeah, it's like the medical man and the physician, and it's there's only two who saw the little machine, and then there's like 5 other people who just showed up for dinner the next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do have a few other notes for this chapter I can just run through really quickly.
Okay.
So the first one, which I alluded to, is Philby, an argumentative person with red hair. Does that remind you of anybody?
No.
I'm gonna get in trouble if I.
No, what are you guys?
Yes, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know. You're the host,
I don't
Connor.
know
You can say whoever you think you're thinking of.
In all honesty, I think I'm more argumentative, but Connor definitely is the prankster of the group. He would conjure a ghost for sure. If he
well, that's what I was saying. Like, if I invented time travel, like, you guys wouldn't believe me just because I fucking pranked you about Hot Tub Time Machine before.
Yes.
You'd be like, I don't
pretty
believe
much.
you because you've pranked me before. It made me believe that you were at Hot Tub Time Machine.
Exactly.
That guy's name is Andy. What?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. I went through
Connor
the four directions thing.
Argumentative. I'm not gonna lie.
I am argumentative.
But
don't make me argue on that. Don't make me argue that I'm more argumentative, Connor.
But no, the thing is I am almost always the one that triggers that.
Yeah,
usually intentionally. Because I know exactly the buttons to push. So it's like
I know you do.
Yeah,
I accept the responsibility there.
Okay. And that comes, according to the text, that comes with your red hair. Your red hair, that's all tied up into it, buddy.
Yep.
No, I think that's largely true, actually.
Yeah.
It's a true stereotype.
I think so too. Josh, what's next?
I kind of mentioned like this book was mind-blowing in the fact that it helped me probably be the first time I realized that time and space are interrelated. And the line is actually right here is there is no difference between time and any of the three dimensions of space except that our consciousness moves along it.
Yes, that is a great line. Absolutely.
Yeah, sums up things pretty well. This one I actually noted because I was thinking about it. He's referring to the portraits, and he calls them, the portraits, three-dimensional representations into his four-dimensional being. And I was thinking about that, and I think, yes, a physical portrait of canvas on a frame, that is, yes, a three-dimensional object. But the portrait itself, the picture, the image, that is two-dimensional. So that is technically a two-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional person.
Yes. You are right. And I think the technicality that they're trying to argue is like they line up the portraits in sequence. And so
yes.
Right, it's like meant to convey the passage of time, so it's trying to be a model of four-dimensional passage. But
yes,
yeah,
no, that I get, but it's
right, yeah.
Calling it a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional being, I guess, was like I was just thinking of the portraits. I don't think I was thinking of the arrangement of the portraits. That would absolutely make it more three-dimensional. Thank you. Hang on, I pulled the notes up again. The last one I have before the Scrooge comment is when they're discussing whether they should go forward or backward in time. And they're like, oh, this would be a great machine for the historian who wants to go back and ask Alexander the Great about how the certain battle went or something like that, or Napoleon. And one of them says, don't you think that would attract attention? Said the medical man. Our ancestors have had no great tolerances for anachronisms. I was like, oh, he just completely just wrote out the grandfather paradox right there. He's like, oh, you think you want to go back and talk to your grandfather? No, he's going to fucking kill you because you're a fucking demon from the future or something.
Yes. Yeah, good point.
So yeah, those are the things I highlighted in chapter 1.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about? I feel like we've been talking about chapters 1 and 2 kind of concurrently together here.
Yes.
So
yeah, for the most part.
So I just have 2 highlights for chapter 2. This probably gets into what we were talking about a moment ago. But the time traveler had more of a touch of whim among his elements, and we distrusted him. That's like it's towards the beginning of chapter 2, but it's very much what you were saying a moment ago. It was like, yeah, all this reason why we should trust the time traveler, but also they just don't, for good reason.
Yes.
But this line also made me think of the Doctor specifically. He's a time traveling madman, but he's got all this whimsy around him because he's the Doctor. And people don't trust him because he's the Doctor.
Right.
Except for the people who know the best.
Go ahead, Connor.
I think there's an aspect of, especially this old time idea of like the eccentric scientist, where like you kind of have to have a level of eccentricity or whimsy or to like think of these bold, new, exciting ideas. And so, I think like he's respected in the sense that like he's an inventor and scientist, and like they are kind of in awe and entertained by him. But not in the. It's just like an interesting thing, an archetype that doesn't really was popular even back then.
Yeah.
I got to go put the bird to sleep. 1 second. You guys keep talking.
Okay. The other one I was going to pull up is just that.
Wait. Can I say one more thing on that too before you go on, Josh?
Sure.
What was that?
No, not to you, Connor. You go put the bird to sleep or whatever.
Okay.
Make it sleep with the fishes.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, like, the other part to that, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think I am, is like the time traveler is also like so competent and skilled and intelligent that like they make very difficult things seem so effortless and easy that people are kind of like, that also creates skepticism. And I think that's like kind of wrapped up in this line that you're talking about, where it kind of feels like he's just having a dinner party and he's like, oh, by the way, I want to show you guys I invented time travel. And so everyone's sort of like, what the fuck? Like, it's like he's so he's so like kind of beyond. He's a character. I agree, they're like the Doctor, because they're so kind of like beyond even
normal people.
Like, right. But even like people who would consider to be intelligent are sort of like, what's up with this guy, you know? And it's might sound kind of crazy, but it kind of reminded me of like Phineas and Ferb, where I don't know if you ever watched that
show. No, I just know a couple memes from it.
I know it's a little bit. It's definitely below us in terms of like our age range, but I have seen some episodes of it, and it's funny for what it's worth. And
I don't doubt it.
And it's like, you know, kind of the shtick of the show is like the two brothers. Every episode they create some fanciful, insane, impossible machine.
Yep.
And they do it without like a second thought. It's like they're just like, oh yeah, let's just, I don't know, fucking go to the moon or whatever, so we can fucking have like moon snow cones, or I don't know what it is, right? And so it's like, I think the point I'm trying to make is like coming back to the time machine. Like, I think this moment is kind of meant to be comedic to the 1895 reader. I think that the way that the time traveler is described and written about here, it's like, yes, they're eccentric, they're hyper intelligent, they're hyper skilled, all of these things. It's like at once it does kind of give other characters sort of reason to be skeptical of them, because it's like, how can they so easily accomplish these things? But I think it's meant to be kind of funny too, that they've conceived of a character who can just do all these things. And I really do feel like there's like a Doctor Who connection there, 100%. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. So, now that Connor's back, I did have one other highlight from this second dinner party. The journalist tried to relieve the tension by telling anecdotes of Hetty Potter.
Yeah.
And that just caught my eyes, because it makes you wonder if Hetty Potter might have been an inspiration for another character not even an century
just
later.
A fucking ripoff. She's a fucking hack. Everything she does is just copied. Joking.
Your mic went out.
Yeah, no.
Everything.
Maybe, the problem is,
not maybe. Abso-fucking-lutely.
The problem is that I'd have to look up what Hetty Potter is.
I think it's supposed to just be some like just a person around town. It's the journalist.
Well, I don't know, Josh, and I actually was kind of thinking about this earlier when we were saying like, oh,
that's how I interpreted it when I was reading it.
We were saying this is kind of before pop culture references. I actually kind of think that H.G. Wells is including pop culture references, but they're pop culture references from 1895, and so they seem completely nonsensical to the modern reader.
Yeah, my quick Google says nobody seems to know actually, but it says people say it might have been a British comic actor or actress, but nobody really knows.
Huh? Because I just searched Harry Potter, and all the references are either actual photos of people from like the modern era, or
there is an actress. There is an actress that didn't appear until 12 years after the Time Machine came out, though.
Yeah, or the results I'm getting are literally chapter 2 of the Time Machine.
Right.
Although I am looking at a gravestone right here. All right, hold on. I am looking at a gravestone right here that is Hetty Potter Lewis, from January 1857 to August 1924. So that would be contemporary.
Okay, but we are not going to solve what seems to be an enduring mystery with
we're not
1 minute of cursory research.
No, I think we can.
And so, Connor,
that's how I do all my research.
All right,
shut up, Philby.
All right, okay.
And so,
stop.
And there's another in my book here. I have like little footnotes and shit at the bottom of my pages for some things. And one thing they mention is that one of the characters, I didn't take a note of it, so I'm not going to be able to find it. But they mention this name, and the little footnote, it's like, oh, it was, they're mocking the time traveler. They're saying like, oh, if you've time traveled, this is in the second chapter. They're like, if you've time traveled, then you can tell us all about the happenings of such and such name. It's the name of like a racehorse from 1895. It's the name of a racehorse. And so this is meant to be like a comical, then contemporary jab at the time traveler. And so there's at least one concrete example of H.G. Wells including something that the then reader would get a chuckle out of. And I kind of feel like, I don't know, we don't know who the fuck Hetty Potter is, but I kind of feel like H.G. Wells kind of is including pop culture references, interestingly enough, and they're just completely divorced from our understanding of pop culture today, which is not a surprise.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling obviously read this book and saw the name and was like, I'm gonna steal that and change a couple of the letters.
She herself may even be a time traveler.
Little Roseberry.
Is that it?
Little Roseberry, yes. That was it. They're a racehorse. Yep. That was it. Because my book tells me that. I obviously would not know that. So, I
did read it as a name. I didn't parse it as a racehorse. So thank you. That's good.
No, well, how exactly? How would you?
How could you? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's no way you would think that.
I think I might. I think on Tuesday when I read it, excuse me, I assumed it was just like a little girl down the street that's in town, like Harry Potter. I just assumed was like the lady who hands out flowers at the street corner, because that's what they do in Victorian London, apparently.
Imagine a book like 150 years from now that just references Seabiscuit, and you're like, what's a Seabiscuit?
Yeah, exactly. R.I.P. Seabiscuit. Okay.
Or a little Sebastian.
Secretariat.
You're so right.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Man, the great horses.
We've had many a great horse in our day. We're lucky to live in the golden age of horses.
We also grew up, 20 miles from Saratoga. So
yeah. Hey, shout out to Clip Clop, who is the best horse you've never heard of. If you want to know more, just send us an email. I'll tell you all about Clip Clop. Okay.
Watch out for Bad Horse, though. He's bad.
I did want to just go through two quick things in chapter 2. One, we already touched upon. It's when the narrator of the story, referring to themselves in the first person as I, says, "Where's Dash?" Mm-hmm. And they omit the name, which is like even weirder considering the framing device is this person is writing the story. Why would they omit the name? It feels like a decision that H.G. Wells would make so they can keep referring to the character as the time traveler. It feels weird that the character who personally knows them and is taking the time to recount this story would exclude their name in like their, but I don't know, maybe
that could be the beginning of the story. The beginning of the book does say, for so it will be convenient to speak of him. So apparently adding his name would make things inconvenient.
That is completely fair, Josh. I agree. I won't harp on it anymore. The other thing I want to say on chapter 2 is also something I touched upon, but I just wanted to give a little bit more focus on. It's the very end of the chapter, I believe, where the narrator is talking about how, like, hey, I'm just writing this thing down. I'm going to do my best to write what the time traveler said. And then they kind of go through this description of like what the room looked like. They were like,
there's a good description.
One or two, yeah, exactly. It's dimly lit. The only thing that's like clearly illuminated is the face of the time traveler from this lamp. And like the other characters, at first they're like turning and trying to make eye contact with each other. And eventually they're also enthralled in the story that like no one even looks at each other anymore. They're all just listening to the time time traveler. I thought that was like such an excellent, I agree. Not only a very good description, but like, wow, like what a detail to include in your book. Like H.G. Wells, you're the motherfucker writing it. And he's writing of obviously this fictional account of this conversation. And yet like the details that they include make it feel like so intimate. And it makes it makes it feel like you're in the room, like listening. Like I can imagine like turning and seeing like a silhouette of a tuxedoed man, like trying to make passing eye contact with me, who's like, are you hearing this shit? Like, it's just very visceral and it really plants you in the moment. It gives credibility to the time travel story. And I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. When I was reading it, I was imagining like the cinematography of what the scene could look like. Or just the composition of like a painting of just like a couple gentlemen around a lamp with one of them telling them a story, because it's like the aside from the time travel, the only thing that's illuminated is the face of the journalist and the legs of the silent man from the knee downward.
Yes. Yeah, that would be an awesome, like an oil painting. That would be so
exactly what I was thinking of. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. I would love,
because I've seen oil paintings like that. Like you go to an art museum, you'll see oil paintings of this, like people like around like a candle. And there's this one painting that I'm thinking of in particular. It's like it's literally called like The Experiment, and it's like a Renaissance era depiction of a man like showing off a vacuum tube of like a bird in a vacuum, and like the bird can't breathe, and it's like that level of science. But it's like everyone's crowded around in this dark room, and this one candle lit like the table and the experiment, and everyone's faces is lit up. That's the kind of vibe and atmosphere that I'm imagining as the time traveler begins a story.
I just looked it up, and that is such an excellent shout out. Please, listener, look this up. It's by Joseph Wright. Wow, what an awesome image to evoke, Josh. Very cool.
Thank you for the. You said Joseph Wright? Yep. Yeah. Experiment with the air pump. That's the full title.
Yeah. We're doing all kinds of research on this podcast tonight. That's what we do. 3 consummate professionals. How dare us? How dare I introduce ourselves as 3 chumps with no credentials? Look at us. Connor, I don't want to pass you by. Before we get into chapter 3 and like really getting into the time traveler's description of like what it is like to use the machine, and then like and then where they end up, is there anything you wanted to mention before we get into that final part of our discussion?
Well, just going back to the dashes, they were used for the name, but were your copies of the book, did they censor the word damned as well? Because in my copy of the book, I think it says it's damned, but it's D, then a long dash, and then just D.
I don't think so.
So I wasn't sure if it was dead or damned, but then by context, I figured out it was probably damned a little bit afterwards. So it's a self-censored, or maybe just the time, because I'm full disclosure, I'm reading a PDF of
I know you
a
are.
scan, but it's a scan of a very, very, very old copy of the book. Like it looks like an 1800s copy or something.
Probably a reprint by some Puritans.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I guess that's not the experience you guys are having.
No, not.
It is not. Sorry. Also, just one more side note here. There's another painting that I found through the Wikipedia article for the experiment with the air pump. It's called "A Philosopher Lecturing on the Orrery," and it's it's even closer to what the time machine would be like, because it's an orrery. It's the little like Victorian clockwork model solar system with like the big bands representing the sky, kind of arcing across it in a dome, and it's all candlelit. It's kind of like that too.
Yeah. As you were describing that, Josh, I found it, and yes, yeah, the bands of the orrery feel very similar to how Wells describes like the rods and this one's made out of I don't know. I can't even think of like quartz. This is quartz.
Yeah.
Right. Like he describes all the materials. It's hard to at least for myself, create like I have like a vivid understanding of this. But it feels like at the time, like that might have been I don't know, maybe more like descriptive terminology. So yeah. That's a good shout out. It's cool to visualize the book as an oil painting. Like what a trip. Absolutely. Okay. So chapter 3, this is
the actual time travel.
This is where the time traveler really gets into the description of time travel. And he's like, I don't want to be interrupted. We kind of glossed over very naturally all the the dinner party and the time traveler. He was very disheveled. He's cleaned himself up now. Now he's really he's like, if you want me to tell you this story, you better sit down and shut up.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about how fucked up he looked. Like he looked really fucking like he got the shit beat out of him.
Yeah.
He went from first Doctor to 12th Doctor.
Yes, yeah. Right after Heaven Sent, when he's stuck in the fucking castle.
Exactly. But now we're back to first
Confession Dial.
Confession Dial. Thank you, Joshua.
He is kind of like the first Doctor a bit, isn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's. I mean, like this chapter. Yeah, right. He describes what it is like to time travel when he pulls that lever and flings himself forward into the future. And that's actually most of what the chapter is about. Like what it is like to be sitting in the machine while you are time traveling. That's a really fascinating direction for the chapter, but that's not all it entails, because the very end of it, he does ultimately decide, like, okay, I have to stop. I can't time travel forever. When he stops, there is kind of like a momentum to the stoppage, and he's flung out of the time machine, and the time machine itself kind of doubles over. And we get like just a very brief description of where the time traveler lands, where he finds himself, and a brief description of like these strange humanoid beings approaching him. That's where this chapter ends, before we get into, holy fuck, I can't believe we have the 4th chapter to discuss at the end of all of this. But before we get into chapter 4, that's pretty much where that leaves off.
He lands in a hailstorm, which is unusual. Usually you'd say like a thunderstorm or a rainstorm, but no, it's actually hailing, and he says it's like bouncing off the time machine and everything. And it's like, it's not a good landing.
No, this is not Obi-Wan Kenobi at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. It's much more dire than that. Yeah. Connor,
more like Luke on Dagobah.
I was thinking the same thing, guys. Luke on
Oh
Dagobah.
man, I cannot wait. And who knows? Maybe Star Wars is after this. Who knows? I can't wait.
I hope so.
Josh, do not hold me to that, because when I'm voting, it's a very different thing.
I know. I'm well aware at this point.
It's very different. I don't want to get your hopes up. You know, I've had 2 beers. I'm sorry. Like, I just.
So what I'm hearing is we need to have 2 beers in you before we vote next time.
Yes.
No, the requirement is it's totally sober. It's totally sober vote.
I promise you, if I was at all drunk for a Chapter Chumps voting, we would have read Star Wars long ago. So, that's not true, because I have been drunk for a voting.
You've definitely been a little bit buzzed.
Sorry. So, Connor, what I wanted to ask you, what did you do you have any thoughts you want to share on like how Wells describes the process of time traveling, or like where the time traveler ends up? What do you think of Chapter 3?
Yeah, I like this a lot, right? That it is fascinating kind of going on this journey with him. I liked, how he calls it an unpleasant experience at first, and he feels like he's falling and all these things. And I mean, it's just like, because I can imagine that is how it would feel, at least the first time, if you're not used to it. I mean, and then I really like all the descriptions of the changing environment, and being flung forward into the future, but obviously staying in the same location in space. And there's even a passage where it's like it makes you think of climate change a little bit, where he's like, at first it was winters turning into summers, and then it was just summers. It was just green for a while. Like, so I thought it was really, really fascinating. And just kind of even going into his like mental state, or the psychology of like what he's doing and the big risk he's taking. Obviously we mentioned that there was a chance that if he stopped it, he could essentially run into something or apparate on something, and it could cause an explosion potentially, depending on what it is, or kill him at the very least. And so that's a risk he knew he had to take eventually. And so yeah, I just like it's eventually he gets to a point where he's just like, well, I have to do it. I have to see what's gonna happen. I can't help myself. And I mean, I don't know if there's a possible, like, is there a possibility where can you reverse while you're still when you're still driving? I don't know. Does he have to stop to make the return trip? I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, I really like this chapter, and like I mentioned before, it did just reminded me of 2001 a little bit in the description of just these events flashing before your eyes, and their effects mentally and physically on this on the pilot of the ship, similar to what's his face, Bowman, at the end of
hey, look at
2001.
Yep. Totally. It is crazy that Wells includes this this whole wrinkle of like you're moving while stationary. You're moving through the 4th dimension while you remain stationary in the other 3. And it's like, and I think it makes perfect sense, but it is crazy that it feels like you're just taking this gamble, because it's like, what are the odds that nothing will be where you are when you stop the machine? Like, it feels like even if it were like a tree, you would just be fucking like horribly fused, like within this fucking, it's like it could be anything. Aren't the odds so much greater that when you stop this thing, you die a horrible death than anything else? But of course, like, yeah, that is the balls to the wall gamble that the time traveler is taking. And Wells does indeed take the time to say, like, hey, when I was making the machine, I just felt like that was part of the risk, the innate risk of discovery that, you know, all people undertake. It's like, hey, what about when people fucking explored the depths of the ocean? You know, people exploded. They really did, you know, before they figured it out. Like, and so like as a pioneer in fourth dimensional travel, he's like, I just have to undertake this. And it's like, what a lucky strike for the narrative, of course, that the time traveler is able to dismount relatively unharmed. I wonder if this concept is going to come back into the story, because it does feel like very lucky and interesting that he's able to, you know, to not be fucking like dismantled into a million atoms or whatever the fuck. So, Josh,
yeah,
what did you make it? I don't know, like, I don't know. Is there anything you want to add to that, or you're just like, nah?
I feel like Josh has a lot of thoughts on this chapter.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't. I wasn't highlighting much throughout this chapter. I don't have any highlights in this chapter at all, actually. I guess I was just enjoying it. I was remembering all the way the sun merged into a band. It's talking about how you can see it going between the solstices. The end where he gets thrown from the machine, and it's like, yeah, I like he becomes viscerally aware while he's on the machine just how dangerous what he's doing is. That's it's all realistic. It makes sense to me. So
yeah,
there wasn't actually much from chapter 3 that I felt the need to bring up.
That's okay. You know, the only note that I took on chapter 3 that I do want to make sure we mention, and it is very much tied up in this whole like the riskiness of the endeavor, but it's like the second page of this chapter. He compares the time traveler. He compares being on the machine on its maiden voyage to holding a pistol to his head, like.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's likened to, you know, effectively it's like to time travel is to be suicidal. You are playing Russian roulette.
Yep. Don't they use the term suicide as like a person?
They do. Yes, they do. Yeah. And I thought that was like a really fascinating, you know, thing to include. You know, and yes, Josh.
Sorry, I was looking for that passage where suicide is mentioned, but there's this passage here. I was, so to speak, attenuated, was slipping like a vapor through the intersects of intervening substances. That kind of goes back to what you were asking about the model not being felt. It's like that. There's your explanation there. He's like a vapor at this point.
Yeah, no, very true. And like Connor was saying before too, like the way that it's described as like because there's moments where physical objects are forming, like literally not around him, but through him. Like he realizes as he's traveling, depending on when he stops, that could be a problem. But as long as he's traveling, those things don't interact. So both of your explanations actually did a lot to like make me go, oh yeah, like it makes sense, at least in terms of how Wells presents it.
And it also makes me think of, like, we talk about this time machine, and also the TARDIS, which, you know, of course was you know, obviously inspired by this. It's another time machine that is developed in science fiction, you know, like less than 100 years after this.
I never thought about this machine making TARDIS sounds until just now.
Yeah, I mean, quite possibly, but and then it's kind of like, I feel like the creators of Doctor Who, maybe, I don't know how much thought they actually put into it, but conceivably they were like, how do we get around the issue where, you know, the time machine appears on a tree or in a tree or like apparating into a wall or into a nuclear reactor or something. And I mean, the TARDIS has done that from time to time. But well, the TARDIS is smart, but it has apparated into things and sticking out of walls and stuff before, but the inside of the TARDIS is in a different dimension than the outside is, and that's how they get around that idea. Is that it's like a little pocket dimension of its own inside the TARDIS. So it doesn't actually, it's not affected by usually by its outside surroundings. So that's just an interesting difference.
Yeah. That is fascinating, and hearing you talk about it, like the TARDIS being influenced by the time machine, made me think, like, even though we have already established, like, hey, H.G. Wells did not invent the concept of time travel, it does make me wonder. I'm not sure if we're going to figure this out now or not. It's fine. It does make me wonder, did H.G. Wells invent the concept of a time machine? Like, was time travel beforehand more rooted in like magical or fantasy understanding? And is H.G. Wells' contribution to take time travel and conceive of it within like a technological science fiction understanding? I don't know if that's true. I'm literally just asking the question. But
or even just as a vehicle. As a vehicle that moves in through time as a car moves through space, like
yes.
So
in that kind,
the very beginning of the Wikipedia article states that the work is generally credited with the popularization of the concept of time travel by using a vehicle or device to travel purposely and selectively forward or backward through time. The term time machine, coined by Wells, is now almost universally used to refer to such a vehicle or device.
Aha! Thank you, Josh.
That's wild though. That's really crazy.
And going back to a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which I mentioned earlier, that is literally the guy fell asleep and wakes up in Camelot. So no vehicle there.
Right. Yeah, so time travel itself was already understood and considered, but a time machine, Wells is credited with, if not creating, then popularizing for sure.
Suck shit, Mark Twain.
Yeah, you tell him.
Kiss my grits.
Damn, you don't mince words when you're talking about Mark Twain, do you?
Well, he's a Connecticut. We know Mark Twain around here. He has a reputation,
Yeah, right. I mean, you come from the the fucking cinnamon state or whatever.
Whatever. Nutmeg state.
The cinnamon stick state or whatever.
The nutmeg state.
What is it?
The nutmeg state.
Wow.
I used to live near the Mark Twain house, and I would never visit because I just that guy can fuck himself.
You have like a personal bone to pick with Mark Twain, don't you?
Yeah, he was a piece of shit.
You know what? I swear to God, I'm putting on a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. We are gonna read that fucking book. Then you.
No, I mean, of course, I would love to read Mark Twain. I'm just. We love the guy around here. It's a little bit of it's like a jab, he's our hometown hero. We're just jabbing him nicely,
He's sort of like the lovable but sort of like a dorkish mascot, that.
Yeah.
There's a hometown affinity for, but also it's like, they're a bit of a fucking loser, right?
Well, he was. I mean, we know how he died on the streets, poor and a drunkard. So obviously, we can all relate. He's a very relatable figure.
I mean, I'm at least a decade shot from that. So
yeah, I am like about 4 or 5 years. I mean,
okay, you got me beat, huh, buddy? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, we will. It's not a race to the bottom.
It's not a race, but who knows who's winning. I did want to say about chapter 3. We got a little bit off track, but I'm glad we did because it's cool to establish like H.G. Wells' contribution to the concept of the time machine. That's fascinating. What I wanted to really just throw out there is that to time travel is to submit yourself to death, and the time traveler really only fully understands this afterwards or like upon doing it. But like there's a point, like again, Wells likens it to holding a gun to your head. it is because of this whole idea of like when you stop, it may indeed be your death. Like there's a bit of a randomization to like, you know, if you're gonna fucking materialize into something or not. And like that kind of coupled with how the time traveler describes the sensation of time traveling, where like it feels like they're constantly falling, and at first it's like very sickening. And you know what, I guess what I'm trying to say is I appreciated how Wells describes the process of time travel as having like these disadvantages. Like this is not some fantastical concept. You know, this is not like the, you know, no offense, but like the Wizard of Oz or something where it's like, you know, you just get transported. Or, you know, this is in terms of how Wells is writing it, this is a scientific process.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an effect that is had on the human body that is largely very unpleasant and negative. And like, I love that it sort of immediately kind of complicates and dispels the sort of like fantasy of time travel, where just like how the characters like, oh, wouldn't it be great to go back in time and figure out the Battle of Hastings? And it's like, yeah, it would be if traveling through time wasn't akin to killing yourself and being reborn upon exit, you know?
Yep.
And the fact that the birth of the time machine, the fact that essentially the first instance of the time machine by H.G. Wells is, you know, he's forward thinking and literary minded enough to say like, hey, this is not just some you know, quick reward you know, like wish fulfillment. That's the term I'm thinking of. This is not just wish fulfillment. There's a price that you pay when you time travel. That is what I want to talk about with this chapter. That's it.
Good analysis from our accredited English major.
Boom. Thank you, buddy. I'm not going to tell you how much I'm in debt, but that makes it feel like it was worth it when you say it like that. So
it's all about phrasing.
Okay, let's talk about chapter 4. Let's talk about the last fucking chapter. I'm sorry that it's at this point in the night. We are going to have to go a little quick through it, of course.
Yep.
There's a lot that happens here. So the time traveler, they indeed exit. They are in this unfamiliar landscape. Everything sort of feels like a garden. They see this massive statue that is kind of described as Sphinx-like, exactly. There's these very short humanoids. They're about 4 feet tall who welcome him. He's welcomed immediately and brought into their palace and given a whole bunch of fruit, you know, like, and you know, I think the big thing is that the time traveler has a lot of reflection on how he thought that as he went forward in time, human beings would inevitably become smarter through the passage of time. And he comes to find here he is at the year 802,701 AD, which is insane.
Yep.
He comes to find that they are not, seemingly, he also alludes to how he's wrong about certain things, but seemingly they are not very smart at all. And he's like, what the fuck is going on here? And he kind of breaks off and he finds himself observing the landscape. He has all of these reflections on fucking communism and sexuality. Holy shit. Like, are we going to have enough time to talk about these things? And it kind of ends on this sort of lament that, like, so many hardships of humanity have been solved at this point in the future that it has changed the way that human beings are and have evolved to be. Josh, I really want you to take it from here and tell us about what do you want to discuss in chapter 4?
Oh boy, I have a lot of highlights. I did note the year because that's actually kind of important in the time travel story. Um, the humans that he encounters, if you can call them human, we will learn a name from them. I actually do not remember what it is. I just remember that there is a name and I can't pronounce it. They're very childlike. They have no attention span. They just want to eat fruit and have merriment through their surprisingly dilapidated uh, community. They like everything is all those stones are white and shining, but when you look closely, it's like there's wear patterns where the highest traffic has been. Some of the stained glass windows are just missing panels, and curtains are just covered in dust. There's several of these cathedrals or palaces, as they were called, that are some are being inhabited, others are just in complete disrepair. So it's not the future that he envisioned. And listening to your summary of it made me think like, oh yeah, this isn't what he expected from the future. And it's like I viscerally understand that right now.
Yeah. Right. We are all time travelers in the long term. If you consider your present past enough,
things might be moving faster than anticipated. There's this one passage on what for me was page 28, or what the Kindle claims is page 28. It was here that I was destined on a later date to have a very strange experience, the first intimation of a still stranger discovery.
Yes.
Insinuating of just foreshadowing of things to come, and looking forward to talking about that more. But in the interest of time, I don't really have a more concrete note on that.
Can I ask though, Josh, while you're bringing it up, because I also put a note down for that, because I also thought it was interesting that Wells makes a point of like, hey, we're going to put a pin in that. I don't remember what he's talking about. Do you?
I do not remember the exact discovery in that location. I think he's referring to the other people that we have not met yet.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So yeah, my next quote, I think, just glancing at it, might be something I want to tie back to The Left Hand of Darkness, but I will just read it out loud and go from there. For the strength of a man and the softness of a woman, the institution of the family and the differentiation of occupations are mere militant necessities of an age of physical force. Where population is balanced and abundant, much childbearing becomes an evil rather than a blessing to the state. Where violence becomes but rarely and offspring are secure, there is less necessity, indeed there is no necessity, for an efficient family, and the specialization of the sexes with reference to their children needs disappears.
Yes.
So this is him. This is the time traveler, or Wells, however you want to view it, reflecting on the society that he's found himself in, and this struck me as interesting because, well, firstly in the beginning, starting to compare the differentiation of the sexes, having just read The Left Hand of Darkness. There's a lot of that same theming of, well, if everyone's the same, then why do you need to have any difference between them? I'm sorry, if anyone can do anything, why does there need to be a physical difference? And here it's like, even when literally everything has been conquered, there's no need for force. So of course everyone's going to be more docile.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be a differentiation of like the strong and the weak. There's another passage later on. I remember. Here it is. For such a life, what we should call the weak are as well equipped as the strong are indeed no longer weak. And it goes back to fucking The Incredibles with Syndrome. When everyone is super, no one is. But it's the opposite of that.
Yes. Right, when everyone is weak, no one's super, or everyone's super.
No one is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's it is a very intellectual reflection on how humanity came to be what he is seeing. And then we have this on page 30 for my copy. It seems to me that I had happened upon humanity upon its wane, which is just wonderful, wonderful language. And also just kind of like a poignant realization for the time traveler. It's like, as you said, he thought he was going into the future to meet like the most intelligent people you could possibly imagine. Instead, he found humanity in its decline.
Yeah, I know Connor wants to say something. Can I add one thing and then I'll
Sure.
And it might even be what Connor wanted to say, so I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, but it made me think of Dune. It made me think of Dune because, Wells is positing, he's like, hey, when there's no hardships, then, everyone is basically going to soften up into asexual babies, like that. Sorry, that's just how it works. The environment is going to shape you and evolve you into like the needs of it. And
where's the worm god when you need him?
Exactly. That's what Arrakis is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. God created Arrakis to train the faithful. That's what they say. And Arrakis creates the Fremen, who are, by their very nature, even beyond the Sardaukar, because no training regiment, no matter how stringent, no matter how powerful, even on Seleucus Secundus, is going to prepare you for what it takes to survive on Arrakis. That is why Herbert posits the Fremen are the most powerful fighting force in the universe. It's tied to the environment. And so we get the opposite understanding here. When there is no hardship, when there is no strife, when there's nothing pushing against you, it's going to create a humanity that has no drive. It has no power.
Which, I mean, is also a concept tackled in Dune, just later on.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yes. Not really. I mean...
No, not... I mean, if we get into details, they would be spoilers, but...
Right. But, so, yeah, I mean, here in the Time Machine, I think it's interesting that they discuss this. I think it's very interesting that it is tied to communism. And that it's like Wells is sort of like commenting on and is sort of like lamenting like the destruction of the family unit,
Yeah, the time traveler just kind of walks out, sees all the palaces, like, communism.
Yes!
Like he's disappointed that it's communism.
I literally laughed out loud. And you know what's crazy too? What is so especially funny about this is the time traveler went 800,000 years into the future. What kind of arrogance does it take? What kind of single-mindedness does it take to assume that communism is going to persist 800,000 years into the future? Like, he takes one look around and he's like, ugh, communism. Communism? You're in 802,000 AD, buddy.
Yeah, only because he can't see any houses or property lines.
Where's the manicured lawns?
It's insane. It's hilariously insane that they attribute this to communism.
Yeah, I mean,
such a funny sign of the times.
Well, there's just so much as we get into, obviously, I mean, more H.G. Wells or even like obviously 1984 or something like that. Like it's all over sci-fi literature from this era and afterwards. Like,
now Star Trek is communist utopia.
Well, yeah, but that's the different angle. And I mean, to be fair, like. That's somebody with an idea of what communism actually is, instead of the boogeyman that Americans saw it as.
Yep.
So I mean, it's very very funny. To me, I mean it's but not. I mean it's not surprising in the. But it's like very funny that this guy who is brilliant, who has such an open, expansive mind, where you can come up with, you can conceive of this idea of the traveling in the fourth dimension through time and all that comes with it. Just seemingly doesn't realize that like this idea of communism or capitalism or whatever, like um it's that is so far in the rear view mirror that it's like, no, this is something totally different, inconceivable. um so it's like, oh man,
I don't think
peering
that
out
word
of
means
the
what you
time
think it
machine,
means.
it's like, oh, it's not barbarism, fucking socialism one, what? No. um yeah, that's very, it's hilarious, but
Yeah.
I wanted to point out though, in the first few chapters, the time traveler, he mentions the difference between, him and his fellow gentlemen at this at his party or his dinner, um how they're, they're above savages. He uses that word savages a few times. um and expected, when he shows up, he is going to be, potentially he'll be treated as one of the savages, as one of the lesser beings, because they're going to be so sufficiently advanced, because of course history and progress is a straight line that is just like capitalism. It gets better and better and never stops. You can get more and more good stuff and you never have to even think about it. Yeah, so yeah, like it's like realistic in the understanding of that, okay, maybe it does end some, we're a little bit short sighted here. Um, but also I think he equates, he equates these new people to like lesser beings, just because their sensibilities are different, and they seem dumb to him, because I mean he doesn't know their language. They aren't communicating in the same way. Like it's just a very I don't know, very like rigid and
Yes.
uh, fragile view of like what humans should be or what intelligent life is, I guess.
Yeah, honestly, when you lay it out that way, because you're right. Like I get what you're saying, where it's like, oh, so Wells can conceive of like a capitalist collapse. And yet I think that and I think you're about to agree with me, it's not so much a failure of capitalism, it's the
No,
succession of communism.
exactly. It's going to be meant as a warning to, like, this could be your potential future, maybe, if you don't if
Right.
you don't stamp out
Exactly.
you
If
know
you roll over and you let it happen, then the
this.
red tide is
Yes,
going to take you over.
exactly. This is your future.
This is your future, right?
Yeah.
A sexless, weak, ineffectual, useless human race that has no, and it's crazy
Like,
because
don't even eat meat.
and it's kind of framed in this like weird. It's like this is like post paradise. It's like eventually the human race, and this is all his assumption. And the chapter does end, we should say, the chapter does end with a time traveler saying that his theory is wrong. So we should expect as readers that some of what he is talking about and attributing here, it's going to end up seeming contradictory or incorrect. That's, right, like there we are missing a piece of the puzzle that's going to change our perception, or at least it should, it seems like.
Yeah.
But absolutely, 4 chapters in, at this point in the story, it very much feels like the time traveler is right. And he's like, yeah, this is pretty much the consequence of creating a perfect society. And then the aftermath because of course the fourth dimension it has no endpoint. It's not just going to stop. Time is going to continue ever forward. And so after you create the perfect society, well, what happens then? What happens after you've achieved perfection? And it seems to kind of necessitate a degradation or a fall, because according to Wells, in the perfect environment, people are going to have no strife or struggle in order to like sharpen and attune their senses, which will lead to a degradation of the maintenance of society. And you get this kind of cyclical, this is very much the red pill sort of weak men create hard times.
Yes.
Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times create weak men. That is effectively, I think, what Wells is arguing within the first 4 chapters of The Time Machine.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even at the very end of the chapter, he calls them the most indolent people he's ever met, which I had to look up the definition of that word, and it's just lazy. He's calling them lazy.
Yep.
Which is pretty bare bones about it.
Yeah.
The weak men, hard times create strong men bit there. There's a meme I found a while ago that's Star Trek themed, but it kind of breaks that cycle and in the way that gives me hope every time I read it. But I actually shared it with some friends like a week ago, so I just pulled it up really quickly. Hard times create strong men create good times create thinking men create discovery shows us our true potential.
Yes.
And that's what I hope and would like to see more of.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah,
don't give in to the don't give in to the cycle. Break the cycle.
No, that's the crazy thing, I think, is like it's not a matter of like which model is right or wrong. Josh, I think that your interpretation is completely, it's like
valid.
Well, yes, but like I think that it's like whatever model the majority of humanity believes will create the model. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. So like if you buy into the good times create weak men, so on and so forth, then I think it will continue to create those men, those people. And I think if you buy into the model that you're positing, that like, the same response is equally as likely. And I think it's more a commentary on like how the stories that we tell ourselves become true. There's no way to like ultimately prove that. That's just what I think. But like to see that in 1890, like in 1895, I completely get that H.G. Wells buys into this, by the way. Oh, yeah. I don't fucking fault the guy. I completely get. In 2025, I'm a little bit more like, really, guy? Really?
Well,
in 1895, I get it,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's not, it's a totally, at that time especially, it's like, maybe be seen as a nuanced take on this subject matter, maybe. But it's very funny that by the time we get to the late 1960s and 70s, Frank Herbert tackles like the exact same idea. And to make no bones about it, he's a libertarian. He's not a communist. He's not a leftist, or as we know it today. But his take on that whole cycle and elements of communism, capitalism, and authoritarianism, and just how it's structured society and how a society responds to that over time. And it's like so much more nuanced and like feels very real and more modern. But it's like, it's funny that it feels like there's such a huge jump between less than 100 years where people are talking about these ideas in such totally different ways.
Yes, but just to like, what's funny too is like the ways in which I feel like, and again, this is only considering the first 4 chapters.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could have egg on our face.
Right.
I mean, he says in the chapter he finds out he's wrong.
Yes,
exactly. That's very true.
But what I will say is, I think that there's also really interesting ways in which it seems like H.G. Wells and Herbert agree. They seem to agree that the environment shapes and influences and ultimately creates a kind of humanity. They agree on that point.
That's what I'm saying is that they're like ideologically kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
But
right. But the way in which it's discussed, you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I just feel like the discussion has changed so much within that less than 100 years that it's like, it's just kind of crazy to me how it's and again, this is they're totally different books and different writing styles, of course, but I just think it's just a little like it's a little bit of time travel, you know, you just to see where the discussion was in the late 1800s to where it was in the mid 60s, you know.
Yes.
Versus where it could be now.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So I do have a couple more highlights real quick.
Yes, let's
before we wrap up here. This one, I'm just going to read verbatim. That is the drift of the current in spite of the eddies. The whole world will be intelligent, educated, and cooperating. Things will move faster and faster towards the subjugation of nature. In the end, wisely and carefully, we shall readjust the balance of animal and vegetable life to suit our human needs. And that was a part of his reasoning as to why he expected things to be better than what he left. Previously, he refers to selective breeding of crops and animals to make the seedless grape, or a larger flour, a more convenient breed of cattle, and goes into this thing about he's at a point in history where man has triumphed over nature and won the battle of man versus nature. He mentioned there's no weeds or fungi, and that actually affects the way things decay and putrefy in this world, which is kind of insane to think about. But everything is a literal utopia, but at the same time, because it is a utopia, it is now therefore a dystopia when you actually look at it for more than a moment. Let's see. I already did the weak are as well equipped as the strong. I thought this one was amusing. This has ever been the fate of energy and security. It takes to art and eroticism, and then becomes and then come languor and decay. And I think this goes back to the the strong men and good times argument, where it's like, yeah, once you have the security, people focus on the art and as he says, eroticism, and they become hedonistic, and then things decay from there, which it's certainly a theory. I think it's certainly a Victorian attitude towards things, but
I mean, it's
out
a very
art and eroticism in particular as a writer, no less, were a little amusing to me.
Yeah.
And then because this whole time he's talking about how things are decaying and there's no attention span and people are just going off doing whatever whimsy takes them, and it's like, well, if all the battles are won, then people I'm here thinking, like, wouldn't they just be making art and having culture? And he's saying, no, we're past that part. This is after that part.
Yes.
Which is wild to think about. I feel like there's some steps missing there, but that's not what Wells is talking about in this this time period. And then my last note, it kind of goes back to what we said it a couple times. Very simple was my explanation, and plausible enough, as most wrong theories are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a little self-serving to say that his theory was plausible enough.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's very much like, yes, he's laying out this whole theory. We've gone into this whole diatribe about its merits, but in the end, he's like, yeah, this was the simple explanation I came up with after I hiked up a mountain or hiked up a hill to watch the Thames Valley, which is now a mile from where it used to be, just roll by and just observe this new world he's found himself in. But yeah, it turned out I was wrong. because even in this idyllic utopia, life is nowhere near as simple as it seems.
Mm-hmm.
It never is.
Yes, and I'm very much looking forward to that complication, because if this chapter just like at face value was like, oh man, communism did this, and the destruction of the differentiation of the sexes and the family unit is like, the worst conceivable fucking future I can think, I'd be like, well, wow, what direction is this going in? But Wells does leave this trail to say, like, it is more than this. And I don't think that Wells is saying that what I'm positing here is wrong. I think that a lot of the things that are brought up here, like, Wells kind of agrees with, but he leaves the door open to complicate those things further. And that is really interesting.
I see this more as the main character is indulging in his preconceived notions as he's taking in this world. He has his theories and his hypotheses, and he has not yet learned to doubt them. He's just taking in the evidence of this new world that he has seen, fitting it to his theory instead of adapting his theory to the evidence. And he hasn't reached that point of losing his preconceived notions.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. I hope you're right about that, because that's not where my mind went to. But if that's where the story goes, I
don't think it is.
I don't know. I
don't know either at this point.
Most have read it, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
that'd be very interesting. I'll keep that in mind for sure.
His mind has not yet opened beyond to what the future holds. He has unlocked time travel. He has seen travel itself, but he has not yet unlocked what the future holds.
Yeah,
he's not yet become enlightened. Also, we never really talked about how the time machine works. It's just like a crystal that is just kind of built into the machine.
Yeah,
and it's described as like this double helix kind of crystal thing. Which could be quartz. It could be. I think it's alabaster's mentioned at some point as well. The whole machine's a work of art, with like clockwork, brass, and nickel, and all that. The reason it took me a week to do this is because this one strut that I wanted to make out of nickel was an inch too short exactly, and it's like, well, you couldn't just get like a brass bar done in like an afternoon. Come on. But yeah, he also disables the machine so that the none of the people, for lack of a term currently, accidentally whisk it off in some direction that he will never be able to recover it in. And he just disables it by removing the go levers effectively. So right, he just has like he just has like the gas pedals in his pocket.
And that's the other, like, I imagine like this big, huge, like a fucking 5-foot lever that he's cranking. But it's basically like the switch on like an analog radio or something. It's very small. Yeah. He just spins off the handle and sticks it in his pocket. It's actually very small.
Yeah, imagine something like the size of a pencil, like a yeah. For some reason, what comes to mind, you remember the SpongeBob episode where Plankton's controlling SpongeBob's brain?
Yeah,
he's got the levers on the little thing he plugged into the brain. That for some reason that's what I'm thinking of, but I'm thinking of something that's about the size of like a pencil, like a full size number 2 pencil that hasn't been sharpened yet. And for some reason, what I remembered from when I first read the book, I thought he took the crystal or whatever the power source for the time machine was, not the steering wheel. He didn't. I thought he was taking the battery, not the steering wheel, effectively.
Yeah.
But I've been proven wrong.
Yeah.
Unless it's the Mandela effect, but that's a different issue.
It's interesting to see how we may be proven wrong or right, or who even knows as we continue to read through this story. There's a lot of interesting things hanging here in terms of like the uniformity of humanity in the face of the absence of hardship. It definitely feels like there's this commentary on like the lack of sexuality that does feel a little bit definitely like related to Left Hand of Darkness. And actually, what I thought was funny too, when we were talking about how he comes up upon this hill and there's a chair there. I'm like, what are the odds that they just have a chair on the top of this hill? This is like Aemon Hen in Fellowship of the Ring.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, oh, there's like a old rusted throne of like some gold metal that rusts pink. But I was just looking at that. I was like, yeah, I could see this being like a Tolkien thing here. Yeah, he's just sitting on a throne and just thinking. I was like, oh.
Did we mention the statue of the statue of the Sphinx-like creature that
we did mention it? We didn't really talk about it.
Exactly, we didn't talk about it.
What do we think that's? What do we think that is? Is it just something, just a new, just new gods, new old gods for these
possibly
future humans?
I was thinking of something like Neo-Egyptian influence.
Yeah.
On some new religion that pops up in 500,000 years that just persists into whatever humanity has become.
We just go back to this. We go back to the Sphinx.
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny thought.
Maybe it's all cyclical. One thing too, like this talks about is like, I think one thing we could be pretty sure of is that this version of humanity, they didn't make it. They're surviving in the ruins of the previous society.
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like all the structures, all the palaces, all the sphinxes. It's like Josh said, like the utopia creates the dystopia, right? It's like, even though the
utopia paradise, is the dystopia.
Yeah, right. Even though they've created paradise, they're still living within a kind of dystopia. This is post, utopia. They're living in the ruins.
It's interesting because everything's dilapidated and stuff, and but they're happy. They are all very happy people, which is like, I don't know. It's very funny. I wonder if we get to see the other side of that.
I think we will.
Yeah, I think we will too. But it's just interesting that they're portrayed as happy for this. If it is a dystopic, like a warning.
It's kind of like an ignorance is bliss thing. It kind of feels like Wells.
That's
is
what
like,
it's being painted at. Yeah,
right. They're just like too fucking stupid to know that they're idiots.
Yeah, which is so patronizing to me. Like a lot of this, it is written in a patronizing way.
Like they're sheep of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was a big discussion, and Lord knows it could go longer. But I think we're all pretty happy with what we discussed here. And I think however elongated this discussion could potentially become if we continued it through the fourth dimension, I have a feeling that a lot of these ideas that are left hanging are going to be expanded on as we continue to read. And so I think we're going to come back to a lot of these hanging threads as we read the next 4 chapters. But wow, what a start to getting back into a Chapter Chumps book, huh?
Yeah.
This is a long one.
Well, it's a long podcast, but it's going to be a short book. So, I mean, yes, we could be having a few 3-hour podcasts in a row, but we're only going to have 3 of them. I doubt when we watch a mid-20th century movie, we're going to end up talking for 3 hours about that movie in particular.
Hey, I could talk about Hot Time Machine all night.
I said 20th century.
John Cusack is great.
I said mid-20th century. That is not Hot Time Machine.
17th century? You sure about that?
No, Josh, it's set in the 80s. They go back to the 80s, so it is the 20th.
But it's not the movie itself is not a mid-20th century. It's a 21st century movie.
All right, whatever you say.
Hey, let's see who knows what the future holds. That's what's so exciting about what we do here.
Yeah.
Connor, can you please take us away?
All right. If you like what you heard, folks, you can go on over to follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at Chapter Chumps and on Blue Sky at if you want to like know about the podcast and when we're recording and when we post episodes, go to the Blue Sky account and follow that because that's where that will be posted. If you want just like other shit posted sometimes, like about Star Wars or sometimes other things, go onto our Twitter page and you can find us tweeting over there about just various subjects and sometimes semi related to Chapter Chumps.
We get the idea, buddy. All right.
I'm not naming names or I'm not saying who runs which account, but
we've gone over that before. Don't worry.
Well, yeah, but I'm not saying it now. If you like what you heard, again, please go to Apple Podcasts and give us a nice 5-star rating and a glowing review. We've gotten one review so far. We are so happy. I read it every day, just like kiss my phone screen. So please keep them coming.
It does mean a lot.
I know, it's very, very nice. It was very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. If you don't want to do that, then that's just fine. You can hit us up, slide in our DMs, and talk about the time what you thought on the time machine. That would be fun too. But most importantly, folks, as always, until next time,
communism,
barbarism.
Who knows?
All right, and this is a little bit of the show that the video watchers get. So enjoy it. See you guys. Yeah. Fuck you, Mark Twain.